This is Talking Devils from talkofthedevils.co.uk. I'm Wayne Barton, and today I'm joined by former Manchester United striker Phil Marsh and Keane Franey, United fan and Talk of the Devils host. Story will be very soon, as soon as I get out of the hot seat. Before we get into talking about things today, please like and subscribe. We've got a lot of content coming up, some new shows with former players and interviews and series as well coming up. We've also got an interview with Rafael de Silva that I did on Monday. That's there. A lot of quotable content making its way across the press, but really good chat with Rafael as always. So go and check that out on the channel. Phil and Keane are here because there's going to be new planned weekly shows with these guys on Fridays. It's not always going to be me, and it definitely won't always be on this early, and it's definitely not going to be me hosting. Obviously talking about current United events and also diving into Phil's memories of being at the club. If any of you read my book, Fergie's Fledglings, I talked to Phil for that, and it's just his story is incredible, and he's the nicest guy, and I'm so pleased that he's agreed to join us for this. And he knows a bit about football as well, so it's great to have him on. Phil, how are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, good. Obviously, weather's been lovely. Finished work at the moment as well, so just enjoying a little bit of time with the family, and obviously, excited for the start of the new season. Hoping we can, build on last year and have a good go at trying to take it that one step further.
Yeah, the weather up in Manchester has been nuts. I mean, we're obviously renowned for getting the rain, and I've not been used to this for the last few days. It's not good. You go on holiday to get it, and it's good when you go, but not when it invades your homeland. It's nuts. Keane, how are you doing? You keeping busy?
Yeah, I'm very good. No, thanks for asking, Wayne. It's very good to be on here for my first ever podcast here on Talk of the Devils, and it's my birthday today as well, so it's kind of a kind of good way to kind of mark the special occasion as well for my first podcast.
Yeah, happy birthday! I forgot about that. That's why you're wearing the black armbands, because you got another year older.
Wow. Exactly. Yeah. Do you know, it's kind of like, even when he's on the punditry, he always has kind of the armbands on. I'm trying to just kind of keep the same thing for my namesake.
The John Terry aspect of
you've
always got to come kitted up. All right, so I'm going to leave the introduction for Phil's incredible story next week, so Keane can handle that. This is going to be a little gentle introduction into this kind of show. But Keane's going to be talking a lot about Phil's time at United, his journey. It is a remarkable story, but that's going to be for next week's show. Thought this week we'll talk about some of the big topics at United. Some big news this week, always is, never an off day. And last night there was breaking news that Paul Pogba might not agree to stay at United. It says that he's rejected a new contract. Just wondering what you guys think about that. Phil, come to you first of all. Paul Pogba, contract expires next year. They're saying that he's not going to accept the new terms that have been put on offer. So United have made an offer, and he's looking to move. What do you make about it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I really like Paul Pogba. I think he's a great player. I just think obviously the contrast from the levels and the standards he sets for France, obviously compared to the United, and the consistency of it hasn't always been there. But for me, obviously, if he doesn't want to be at the club and he doesn't want to take a new offer that the club's made, and then I think the club really should look at obviously cashing in and trying to get some money for him, and then that opens the door possibly for the likes of Van der Beek, who's obviously not had a fair run in the team, who could maybe step into that role and sort of flourish. And even Lingard, who's came back now and looked good in the pre-season game last week, he obviously, if he brings the form that he was showing at West Ham, he's obviously another player that could come into that position and sort of link up with Bruno and the strike force that we're going to hopefully have with the signing of Sancho, and obviously keeping Cavani for another year. I think that could work well. And I always think if a player doesn't want to be at the club and doesn't want to sort of commit and obviously be part of what they're trying to build on, obviously at least looking at now spending and getting some quality players in, or hopefully we can get Varane over the line, and that should make it a more sort of solid spine, if you like. And I think if he's not looking at being a part of that, then the club just needs to sort of get as much money as they can for him and just try and move on. Although he is a world-class player, and I do like Paul. I just think obviously he's not been as consistent as he probably would have thought he may have been, or for one reason or other, he's not quite found his top form on a more regular basis.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I tweeted about this last night, and I've talked about Paul numerous times on the podcast that I do with Paul Pogba, and he's obviously a tremendously gifted player. He's one of the best players that we've got at the club. But it is that sort of. I've always thought investing in the future is investing in what we've had in the past. You're expecting a repeat of that. I don't think there's any reason to expect that we get anything different. So is it worth investing? And I'd say this on his behalf as much as ours, because he might think that his time's been wasted. That he's been involved in this sort of regeneration period of United, and that he's wasted some years of his career. Basically, maybe some of his peak years. He might think that. Keane, obviously, as a fan, we see things a little bit differently to Phil. From he's talking from the player's perspective. It is a shame, if a player doesn't want to stay at the club, you would most likely say be on your way and sort of give him best wishes. Paul Pogba, though, very divisive figure. We've had sort of years of speculation with Mino Raiola. Where do you stand on this? It's pretty big news, even taking into account the fact that he could have left next year for nothing.
Yeah, look, I think this speculation was always going to occur this summer because he's in his last year of his contract. PSG, who he's rumored to be going to, are heavily interested there in the midst of their own rebuild. And look, let's face it, with Paul Pogba, there's always speculation because he's a top footballer. The top clubs are always going to want the top footballers. I think you look at it. I feel right. There's been times in the football club where he hasn't been consistent. But look, again, maybe can you put that down to maybe some of the players he's had around him until the likes of Bruno Fernandes and Van de Beek and Cavani come in? I think last season is probably one of the best versions of Paul Pogba you've probably seen in the football club. Post the Leipzig game, I think if you look at his run of form from December till ultimately when France got knocked out of the Euros, he was I think that was probably his most kind of longest period of time where he's had a consistent run of form. For Manchester United, it's just a shame now that we're probably not going to see that even more now with him leaving. But I think you have to look at it from a fan's point of view. It's always a shame to kind of see one of your best players go. And you see when Paul Pogba's in their team, we're a much better team. He keeps us ticking. So we pass the ball forward that bit quicker. He's strong. His aerial ability is very good. He has all the attributes of a top midfield player. But at the same time, if he wants to go, and it's rumored we offered him £350,000 a week. If he wants to go after after getting offered a huge wage packet like that, clearly his mind is elsewhere. If we can get the rumored £50 million for him, and maybe invest that in a younger player, like a Camavinga who we're linked with, someone like that who can come in and build for the future. Because I kind of aligned this Pogba situation with Philippe Coutinho from Liverpool. When he left Liverpool went and addressed other areas in their team when that player left, and we're already doing that now. We've Jadon Sancho coming in, potentially Rafael Varane, and then if you get a Camavinga in, all of a sudden, yes, Pogba's left, but there's other areas in the team that have been addressed. But look, if he wanted to stay, I'd have absolutely no problem with it because, again, he's a world-class footballer. Replacing him could be tough, it could be hard, but Donny Van de Beek, as Phil mentioned, he's a player who's been to a Champions League semi-final. He's come from an Ajax team, who are quite successful in Holland. So maybe he can get a chance to maybe prove what he can do in that role, in Paul Pogba's role. Time will tell. But I think if he's rejecting the contract this summer, I think it's only fair that he leaves. And look, I wish him the best. I think, look, anytime any player leaves their football club, I'd never wish the worst for him because, look, he has contributed in games where he has won us games of football. So, look, for me, if he could stay, that'd be great. But I think we can't afford to leave him go on the free again because we left him go on the free, back when he came out of the academy and he became a world-class player. He went to Juventus and we paid £89 million for him. I think if we let him go for free after paying 89 million, that could be kind of, not a great look for the football club,
Might sign him in 5 years for 150 million.
Yeah.
Phil, you played at a time when Fergie basically got rid of Rude. And this is one of the things I tweeted about yesterday. And it's not directly the same because Rude was a striker. But at the time, in his last season, and this has nothing to do with Rude's quality because he's probably the best finisher I've ever seen at United. He was absolutely fantastic. And I loved him. I loved him as much as any fan could love a player. You know, he was one of my favourites. But at the time, he'd obviously had his little fallout with Fergie. But it was obvious that the team was moving in a different direction as well. You know, we had Ronaldo and Rooney, we had Sahar, and the thing is, Sahar wasn't. I'm not being dismissive of Sahar as a player either, but he wasn't anywhere near the predatory striker that Rude was. But he had a little bit of guile in his movement outside the box, which Rude didn't have. A little bit of selflessness to his runs. You know, Rude would make the selfish runs, and that was a benefit of Rude. But Sahar wouldn't. You know, he'd make the sort of more selfless runs for the team, which helped the likes of Rooney and it helped Ronaldo. Are we in a sort of similar position to that? I mean, it's not directly the same because Pogba's a midfielder, but there has been that conversation for basically the entire time that he's been at United, where his best position is, and his inconsistency basically because he played one game out of three. And if people look now at the best games that he had, everyone just talks about the second half against City where we were 2-0 down and turned it around. And apart from that, people don't really mention his form. They don't talk about, particularly good games that he's playing. I'm not saying that that's particularly fair, but there has been this running narrative of the fact that we've, for whatever reason, and it's a problem on the club's part as much as Paul's, that there's never been a consistent place for him in the side or a consistent place where you put him and say that's definitely where he's playing his best, possibly on the left of midfield for a little bit of time in the last season. But this idea that we should be building a team around him at this point feels like we shouldn't. My gut feeling as a fan is I think that maybe it's not the wisest investment to make. So do you think we are at that kind of thing where maybe you've got a really talented player that he doesn't quite fit what we're trying to do?
Yeah, I think it's obviously a difficult situation at the moment. I think the majority of last season, Ollie was sort of chopping and changing, and I don't think he really knew his best team in terms of, he liked to play Fred and McTominay in the vast majority of the games, and then, he was trying to sort of like shoehorn players in just to accommodate that sort of formation, which was a little bit negative and defensive for me. Obviously, especially at home at Old Trafford, playing sort of the bottom half teams, I would have liked to have seen, teams been a little bit more expansive and a little bit more positive. And obviously with Paul, in terms of his positional sense, I think when you see him and you watch him when he plays for France, because they've obviously got Kante and a lot more quality in that area around him, he just seems to have sort of like a free role and he dictates the play and he can, come and get it off the back four. He spreads the play, drives forward, obviously scores goals like he did in the Switzerland game, which is, what he's capable of doing. And I just think for United, he sort of never really had that license to sort of express himself as much as he probably would have liked to in a more attacking sort of situation, which, it's disappointing. But I think obviously inevitably his performances, sometimes when things aren't going quite well, you've got to have that about you where you dig in and you just work hard for the team and you just sort of try and battle that through. And I think sometimes in games I've seen a side of Pogba where if things aren't going quite well, he'll sort of be shrugging his arms about and not really, putting a shift in as much as other lads. And I just think, when you play for Manchester United, regardless whether you're, the best player in the world or you've got to sort of put the effort in, and 100% the fans understand you're not going to have a great game every single week and you're not going to be, on top form. But if you don't put a shift in and you're not working hard for the rest of the players, then, that's, I think, why I think he's been sort of called out by quite a lot of the fan base, just because of that, side of him where he sort of doesn't seem to be bothered at times, which, I know I'm not saying he doesn't seem as though he's bothered. He clearly will be, but I just think sometimes that perception comes across like that because of the body language and some of the sort of game where he probably hasn't had as much of an impact on the games. But for me, I think obviously the club now just needs to obviously, make the decision. And if he doesn't want to stay, they've obviously offered him a large increase in wages. And if he heads elsewhere, then unfortunately, I think the best option would be to sell him and wish him the best. And as Keane said, there's other players we can maybe invest in and look to strengthen other areas, because, as I said, we've got the likes of Van der Beek and Lingard. If he comes back and shows the form he had at West Ham, then we should have more than enough to sort of cope and just obviously build and take that forward into this season.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think that the idea of Pogba being this player that you need to fit into a side is going to change dramatically with the reality of what we're going to have, like a 4-3-3 or something like that. Keane, you mentioned PSG. That's obviously the most likely destination for him. But do you think that, considering how the Varane negotiations have stalled lately, that we could try and sort of ship him off to Madrid? But do you think that Madrid's they might not be able to afford his wages?
I think you look at the situation at Madrid at the moment. They wanted Mbappe like in the last 12 months, and like their financial situation over there is kind of negated that at the moment. Hence why Sergio Ramos has left the club. They're trying to offload a lot of wages off the wage bill. Look, I think if you're wanting to negotiate the Varane deal, using Pogba as a make weight, could be an option. But I think looking at Madrid's kind of wage structure and the kind of model they're trying to adapt now, I don't think that would be a possibility because of the financial situation they've had. They're not making any big money signings this summer. I think you look back at the Eden Hazard signing for Madrid, like I think gone are the days where they're paying £100 million for a player and then obviously not making any sales from it. So I think the fact that Varane and Ramos are leaving would show kind of the financial situation that they're in. But look, I think PSG is probably, like, when you look at Pogba's trajectory of the move, like, he's going back home to France for his last big contract. You look at it, he's going home. He's going to a team under Pochettino. When you look at their transfers this summer, they look like they're trying to be serious in terms of winning the Champions League next year. I can kind of understand why. He probably prefer to move to Paris over anywhere else. But look, when you look at the rebuilding job that we're doing at the moment at Manchester United, I think people have to kind of really stand up and take notice, because if we're going in looking at players like Jadon Sancho, Rafael Varane, Eduardo Camavinga, and maybe even a defensive midfield player, which is something that's been quoted in the last couple of days, that once the Varane deal gets done, that may be an avenue where Manchester United can look at. Like, that's an attractive prospect for any footballer. But maybe it's a thing where Pogba maybe he's been here for 5-6 years now. He wants to do a change of surroundings. Maybe he just wants to go home and play his football, and also play under manager Mauricio Pochettino, who is a top coach. And look, I won't hold anything against them, but if it was me personally, I think, look, if you want to use them as a make weight for Rafael Varane, it's a no-brainer, because then look, it reduces the transfer fee and it frees up funds again for us to address other areas where we can kind of help in the first team. Because look, at the end of the day, he's a top-class footballer, but like Sir Alex always said, like, attack wins you games, defense wins you titles. We need to get a strong spine together. If you get that spine together, we will be a formidable team next season.
Yeah, some of those players that will be forming, not maybe the spine, but certainly the bulk of the squad, were on show against Derby last week. Phil, as the pre-season got underway. Difficult one to gauge, really. Typical pre-season fare, it was kind of like a reunion for the old boys. One of those Legends games. You got Rooney on the side. You got a few former United players in their ranks and a few Derbies in ours as well. League round coming on. Just a typical pre-season game, basically. But the highlight being, I think, probably Palestri's goal in the second half. What did you make of the performance?
Yeah, obviously, pre-season there was a lot of young players on display, and I was happy for Tom Eaton, obviously a good friend of mine, and obviously I thought he had a really good first half, made some good saves. But yeah, no, as you say, I think it was just obviously trying to get some minutes into the lads. But I was happy with a lot of the performances. You say Palestri's goal in the second half was good. I thought Lingard looked good when he came on, looked bright. And yeah, a lot of positives there from some of them lads who are on the fringe of maybe breaking into that first team squad. just trying to obviously impress Ollie with the lads who was involved in the Euros not being back in the squad yet. So obviously good for them to get some minutes and some experience, and obviously nice to obviously see Rooney on the sidelines and come and play against these side who I wish him obviously the best with Derby. I think he's signed some good lads there. Obviously Kazim Richards, who was at AC Milan a few years back, and hopefully he can do well there as well. But no, it was good all round performance, and again just good to see some of the young talent on display, which is something I was part of at the club at the time. You always excited to be in and around the first team, and getting the chance to give it a shot and see what happens. And Ollie's maybe got a couple of them who he's looking at to say, yeah, well, you could be one to maybe make the step up this year and be a part of the squad.
Yeah, Kazim Richards, the modern day Steve Claridge with like 50 clubs. Claridge just kept going and going. He used to play for Sheffield United, didn't he? And then he went to Turkey. Yeah, everywhere. His goal was good as well. It was a pretty good goal. Lee didn't have much of a chance with that one. Keane, good performance in the second half. Like Phil said, Jesse came on and played really well, hit the bar. And I know Phil's actually mentioned Jesse a couple of times. What do you think about that situation? I mean, he did come on. He obviously loves playing for United. He had a very difficult sort of 18 months. Ollie's talked about him as possibly staying around, and I think that's kind of the plan, especially with the injury to Marcus and the possible surgery. What do you think about that? What do you think about the second half performance? But obviously, Jesse's performance in there as well.
Yeah, look, I think Lingard was actually a massive part of that second half performance. If you look at his link-up play with the likes of Shola Thierry and Hannibal, Palestri, the one-touch football was very good. The way they were knitting their passes together, the movement was very intelligent, and it was very good to watch. And again, like one thing about Jesse Lingard that he's always shown the club is that he shows versatility, and you kind of seen that in that second half where he was on the left, he was in the attacking midfield role, he was on the right. He was always trying to make things happen and get players around him, moving and keeping the game ticking. And it was something I really enjoyed watching on Sunday. And again, just his role, like linking up with Shola Thierry for Palestri's goal, and that pass by Shola Thierry, the timing of it was absolutely outstanding. And look, the composure of Palestri to take it around the keeper and finish it the way he did, he looked like a seasoned pro. Like in terms of the way he done it, like in terms of the confidence to do that. So it was absolutely fantastic to see. And look, I think Jesse Lingard this season could be an important player for us, because you rightly mentioned, Wayne, that like Marcus Rashford is going for surgery. He's potentially going to miss the first 2 months of the season. In them first 2 months, we've a lot of games to play domestically and in Europe. So he's going to be important, whether it's on that left-hand side or if Pogba leaves, does he have to play in a more of attacking midfield role? And like you also have to take into consideration there's players coming back from the Euros where they're only going to have the last pre-season game against Everton at Old Trafford, where they're going to have to get minutes. So I'll be honest with you guys, don't be surprised to see Jesse Lingard in the starting team on the 14th of August against Leeds. I think that's a very big possibility. And again, like he showed at West Ham, like his quality, like it was 9 goals and 6 assists in 16 games. That's a very good return from from the end of January to May. And look, you seen what Lingard propelled West Ham from mid-table to a European spot. So like he's shown his quality. But people have to remember with Lingard that he's a big game player. If you actually look back at Jesse Lingard's career, the goals against Palace, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, like he's scored in a lot of big games, and he's delivered in very big moments. So I think he's definitely a player you can have in the squad. And when you look at the form that he endured before his loan move, there was a lot of stuff going on before that. And Jesse's documented that. Ollie's documented that. So to see a fully fit and firing Jesse Lingard come back, I think that can only benefit us in the long term.
Yeah, I agree. Big season for Ollie then. Obviously, a lot of progression last season. Well, I think that there was. A lot of people didn't because, there's the rumbling of the argument throughout the season, really. that's what happens throughout a season when things are happening as they unfold. People make knee-jerk sort of comments and reactions. It's the nature of the game, basically. But the progression now was clear to see from the following season. A lot of people saying that, we should have been better in the final against Villarreal. I agree. But at the same time, I talked to Keane about this previously on his channel. You can't really dismiss a final on the fact that we lost it on penalties. Do you know what I mean? It's not fair to sort of criticise Ollie too much about that. Although I was critical about his tactics in the game, not necessarily the fact that we lost it on penalties. But it is nonetheless a big season now because he's been in charge for a few years. He's going to need to back up what he's done with some silverware because he's at Manchester United, and that's, again, the nature of the game. Phil, so I'll come to Keane first on this one. What do you think? We've talked about what Ollie's done so far, and I know that you're supportive of that. You're very much supportive of the manager, but what do you think in terms of what he's got to do this season to make sure that he's regarded as a success?
I think, look, this season is massively important in terms of really highlighting progress, because the fact of the matter is, came in, he stabilised the club, third, second, the only way is up really at this point in time. I think a domestic trophy this year would go a long way in terms of those signifying progress, whether that's League Cup or FA Cup. I think we have to give the Premier League a real good kind of go at it this year. I know it's hard because the rivals are all going to be, building themselves, but I think we need to definitely be thereabouts win the end of April, early May. I think that signifies progress. If we don't win the title, at least be within 6 to 8 points away from it. I think that would signify progress for me. And again, domestic trophy, but also a lot of people are sleeping on this, but a run in the Champions League this season, I think, would be something that maybe be required, because you look at in the last couple of years, we haven't had a kind of a good run, and I know when he first came in, we got to the quarterfinals. I'd maybe like to see that again. At least quarterfinals of the Champions League next season, really have a good go, because with the squad we have, we've seen Chelsea. They didn't have necessarily the best squad, but they set up well tactically, and they won the Champions League. So I'd like to see us do well in Europe, because Manchester United, it's in their DNA, winning trophies and being a top side in Europe. That's what we should be. So I think definitely domestic trophy, a good run at the title, and a run in the Champions League. I'm not necessarily saying win it, because that's a tough task for any team. We can't just go out and say we should win it, because look, there's a lot of those top teams in Europe. But run the Champions League, domestic trophy, and a good run in the league. That's
for you to sort of say that Ollie's been a success, so that we're making progress, rather than this will be a very successful season. Do you know is that what you mean by that? You're not necessarily...
Yeah, so I'm saying in terms to kind of highlight progress, that's what I would be kind of looking at. Now, obviously, look, as Manchester United fans, we all want to win the title, and that's the holy grail. That's the be all and end all. But I think I have to look at it in the sense of there's other clubs out there who are going to spend big as well this summer. So I suppose my expectation level is at a certain point. But if we do sign Varane, and if Paul Pogba stays at the football club, that expectation could change.
Yeah.
So if we do sign others. But I think looking at the way the current trajectory of the team is going, that's where my expectations would be in terms of progress.
Yeah. Phil, tell us a little bit about Ollie. You've spent a lot of time with him. Again, a little bit of a spoiler alert for next week's show for those who aren't familiar with Phil's story. When Phil suffered an injury, I'll call it for now. He spent a lot of time. He had a lot of knee problems for 2 or 3 years, really. He was tipped at one point to replace David Beckham on the right wing. When Ronaldo signed, people always say that Ronaldo was signed to replace David Beckham, and that wasn't the case, really. He was signed to play in the reserves for half a year, and like Ollie was, basically, and then Ollie played so well and came in. But Ollie was tipped to play on the right wing, and he actually started the season on the right wing. But then he suffered his knee injuries, and you spent a lot of time in sort of rehab with him and close and personal, basically. People have talked about Ollie as a coach, someone who obviously saw the game in a different way. He spent a lot of time on the bench, so he would watch the game and observe it. And a lot of people, the guys who played with him the reserve team, when he was the reserve team coach, they would talk about how he was a very encouraging kind of guy. But you were sort of with him towards, it would have been towards the end of his playing days career, because I know he obviously came back for a final season, but that was the time really where he was studying the game and really learning his craft as this observational kind of guy. What was your take on his personality? How well do you think he's done as United manager?
Yeah, I mean, obviously spent a lot of time with Ollie, as you say, there in the injury sort of rehabilitation period, and then obviously he was the reserve team manager for a brief spell as well, and I played under him. Just very passionate about the game. Loves football, loves watching it, loves talking about it, loves being involved in it. A big thing for me, obviously, as a youngster coming through at United, he always had time for the younger lads. He'd always sort of be approachable and somebody you could maybe bounce things off. As a striker, you want to learn and become as good as you can be. And Ollie was someone who I sort of used, because I used to ask him questions. We used to do finishing together after training sometimes. And I think obviously he took that into his sort of managerial role. He was, man-to-man management of the players, and everything like that was second to none. I think he's great. He sort of makes everyone feel like they're part of the team, whether you're playing or whether you're on the bench. He's always there. You can speak to him about any problems you've got. And for me, I think he's shown that in obviously the role he's done with the first team in the last couple of years. As you say, he's stabilised. I think obviously last year, would have been judged a little bit differently if we'd have got the Europa League over the line. But fans can have their own opinions on that. But I think for me, Ollie's doing a great job. There is certain things that I've sort of not sort of didn't sort of want him to do it, but I just think in terms of some of his team selections, as I said before, some of the home games against some of the lesser teams, thought it could have been a little bit more adventurous and gone a little bit more attacking. Some of the in-game management sort of substitutions maybe getting made a little bit earlier and stuff like that. But I think overall, he's done a great job, and I don't think there's any other person that could have came in really that would have sort of done much more than what Ollie's done with that current crop of players. I think now the intentions are that we're looking to sign bigger players, better players, the likes of Sancho, and hopefully if we can get Varane and Camavinga, if we can get players like that to come in, that's the sort of statement for me to say that we're serious and we want to have a real goal this year. And obviously a domestic trophy, as Keane said, would be a big plus, just to sort of give the fans something to show for all the efforts over the last few years. And obviously, for me, I think Ollie's more than warranted another sort of opportunity to do that, and hopefully the players can repay the trust that he's given in them, because obviously a lot of the lads he's sort of persisted with and gave them chance after chance when sometimes other managers in the past, like Mourinho with some of them, he sort of didn't give them the first sort of crack of the whip to get that run of games, like to Shaw and people like that. And I think he's rejuvenated the likes of Luke Shaw's sort of career really, and he's come on leaps and bounds for me. Been one of the more sort of positives over the last few seasons. So, yeah.
To interject on that point, obviously Luke Shaw is the big one, but do you think that when people have been critical, like I said, I'm guilty of that as well, of the in-game management and the sometimes delayed substitutions, but it's very much like faith-led management, isn't it? He invests the faith in the players. So yes, in the short term, you might criticise the lack of substitutions, but then maybe if on the other hand you look at it and you think, well, look at the benefit of the patience shown to Luke Shaw. I'm not saying that makes every wrong decision right, but you'd rather have that than not have it. Do you know what I mean? Is that where you are with that? Would you say that?
I agree. I know what you're saying, and I agree with that. I just think at times, obviously, in a game, the heat of the moment, and you maybe need a goal, or things aren't quite going to plan, and everything seems as though there's not really anything. It's gone a bit stale in the game, and something needs to change. Maybe a tweak in the formation, or some fresh legs. I just think sometimes in certain games, Ollie's maybe left it a little bit too late to maybe bring on a sub to try and change it up or make an impact. Because obviously as a player, I know myself, if you're only getting 10, 15 minutes to come on and try and make an impact in a game, that's really hard to do. You sort of, the tempo of the game, you take 5 minutes, 10 minutes maybe to get to the sort of pace of the game. And, obviously if you get given a little bit more time, so say like at the hour mark, he's making a couple of changes for lads to come on and, make an impact. I think that gives then you a bit more time to get yourself into the game, and hopefully then, have an impact with the fresh legs or the change of formation, which I think Ollie's maybe sometimes, not all the time, as I say, he's the manager at the end of the day, he makes the decisions, but I just think some games he's maybe left it a little bit too late in certain situations, or he's maybe brought on the wrong personnel for me. That'd just be my, obviously, opinion on it. But again, he sees these players day in, day out. He knows them a lot better than I do. And he has the trust. And obviously, as you say, he's given lads like Luke Shaw, who've just mentioned, the run of games. And obviously, he's obviously, been an absolute, revelation in the last sort of 18 months for me. And he's become one of our most consistent performers. So,
yeah. Maybe just judges people on his own contribution. Maybe he thinks because he only needed 5 minutes to get into a game and change it that everyone can do that. Right, that's it for this week, guys. For the introductory show, anyway, next week it'll be Phil Keane hosting with Phil's story. Please like and subscribe to the channel. As I said earlier, there's a Rafael da Silva interview that we did the other day. I will be back on Monday for the first podcast of the new season with Paul Parker. That'll be live at 10 a.m. So check out that. Take care and have a great weekend, guys.